What is up, Bitcoiners? It's your boy CK, and this is another great episode of the Bitcoin Magazine podcast. This week, I sat down with Ben Carman. That is Ben the Carman. He has been absolutely killing it in Bitcoin tech and especially DLCs over at SuredBit. We go through his journey from being, a college contributor to open source all the way to, leading cutting edge engineering over at one of the premier engineering shops in the Bitcoin space. And from there, we talk about what are discrete log contracts, DLCs, and what they enable for Bitcoin. We talk about Taproot and the latest in Taproot activation. And we talk about libertarianism and why libertarians need to adopt Bitcoin, why libertarians need to take action and stop LARPing. This is a really good podcast. Before I get into it, though, let's talk about Bitcoin 2021. Ben is going to be at Bitcoin 2021. Nick Szabo is going to be at Bitcoin 2021. Chamath, Tony Hawk, Jack Dorsey, Michael Saylor, all of them are speaking at Bitcoin 2021, and we are going to be announcing a lot of other fantastic speakers. Ticket sales are absolutely banging. It is absolutely unreal how much energy the Bitcoin community is sending to our event. And now that it is in Miami, oh my gosh, it is going to be absolutely banging. June 3rd, 4th, and 5th. The 3rd is our whale day, our VIP day. The actual conference is the 4th and the 5th. It's going to be an entire week of Bitcoin in Miami. So make sure to get there early. Make sure to check our website. We're going to be publishing all of the events that are going to be associated with the conference. And guys, get together with Bitcoiners. Go get 10% off your ticket at b.tc/conference when you use promo code Satoshi. That is all caps Satoshi to save 10% off your ticket. Peace. Let's get into this podcast. Bitcoiners, I am sitting right across the screen from Ben the Carman. Ben, I remember the first time we met, actually. It was before your rise to Bitcoin development greatness.
Yeah, we met at BitBlock Bloom 2019, right?
Yeah, I don't. It was it was the Nakamoto Institute beef dinner,
Yeah, that's
or
right.
barbecue dinner.
Yeah, that was a ton of fun. That was like super surreal for me. Like meeting, like I remember like sat next to Safety and I was like, oh my God, I'm among the gods. And yeah, I got to meet you, met a bunch of other people. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah, both very early in our Bitcoin careers. I think you had like 200 followers or something like that at the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, dude, following finishing up school, you went straight into SuredBits and really started like cutting your teeth on some cutting edge tech. So I'm really excited to have you on to kind of talk about what you're doing there. Why don't you kind of give the listeners who might not be familiar with you kind of like the lowdown on what your deal is?
Yeah, I mean, so like CK said, I was like, kind of a nobody back in 2019. And at that time, I was like kind of contributing to Bitcoin Core and Wasabi in my free time. And then I graduated college and got a job here at SuredBits. And I've been doing that for the past like year and a half, where primarily we just work on just like Bitcoin open source stuff. And then DLCs is like our flagship thing we're trying to really promote. Yeah, that's like mostly what I'm up to so the last 2 years.
So can you like kind of talk about, being a college kid contributing to open source projects and then turning that into a job and then now, really pushing forward some of the best and most cutting edge tech in Bitcoin?
Yeah, being in college and contributing to Bitcoin projects is honestly terrible because it's like at one point you're like, oh, I need to do my homework and get good grades. Another thing, you're like, well, I really want to spend time, learning all this cool stuff on Bitcoin, and you end up kind of tanking your grades a little bit. But yeah, it's a fun process. Honestly, I learned way more in like the year I did contributing to open source projects than I did in all of college. Like you pick up so much stuff from just getting like, these super smart people reviewing your pull requests and code and reviewing other people's code, and you learn a ton just by doing that, at least in my experience. And yeah, I had like a pretty decent resume applying to SuredBits, where I contributed to Core and Wasabi a bunch. So I had like a bunch of Bitcoin open source projects, show my worth. And then applied to SuredBits, did like a small test project with them as like a part of my introduction, and then after that, I was able and accepted the job. And yeah, it's been a ton of fun ever since.
Okay, so let's talk about DLCs. I guess let's start with like basic introduction of what it is, and then we can kind of get into the fun stuff.
Yeah, so DLCs are kind of like Bitcoin's best way to do smart contracts, and
And it
probably the
really quick, what DLC stands for discrete log contract. Is that correct?
yeah, discrete log contracts. Honestly, it's terrible branding. Like no one knows what a discrete log is. Like, I mean, what it really means is just the discrete log of a public key is a private key. So you get it kind of works into how it works, but like it's terrible branding. But basically what it is like say me and you want to bet on something. We set up a 2 of 2 multi-sig with each other, and then we give each other invalid signatures, and then an oracle, a third party that we're trusting to just say something that happens in the real world. So they could be saying, the Bitcoin price, they could be saying who won the Super Bowl, they could be saying who won an election, they could be saying anything they want. And then they're gonna give out a signature saying this thing happened. And then we use that signature to turn our invalid signatures with each other to valid, and then execute our contract on chain. So this is like a really like compact, scalable, and private way to do contracts, and it's like just super easy to do on Bitcoin. Where we're just like at the end of the day, it's just a 2 of 2 multi-sig, and then sending it to each other afterwards. So there's no like on-chain footprint, whereas like things on other chains are doing smart contracts. It's very obvious what you're doing. Like you're sending it to like this contract's address, and then the funds are coming out, so everyone knows like what happened and why you got the money. Whereas with this, the on-chain footprint is just like a 2 of 2 multi-sig. So it could be a lightning channel, it could be just a 2 of 2 multi-sig, like something like Blockstream Green. The participants can't, or the like third parties can't know. It's just the participants that know. So it's a really nice way to do it, and also it's extremely scalable, like I said.
Yeah. So can you kind of talk about like I guess in terms of DLCs, right? So the use case is effectively enabling an oracle to coordinate with people. And the idea is that, anyone can just pop up, put some Bitcoin down as collateral and then say, I'm signing for this event, right? And then anyone can create a contract that refers to that signature without actually communicating with the oracle. And like that's kind of like the key here and what makes it like really different than, oracles on Ethereum or anything like that. This is like truly like an ecosystem of contracts and oracles, and they can just kind of plug into each other and build from there.
Yeah, exactly. So like when say like me and you are doing a contract, we can pick any set of oracles we want. We could like, find 3 of our best friends. We could go find 3 exchanges. We can pick anyone that's actually an oracle. And us picking oracles doesn't mean like everyone else doing the same contract has to use the same oracles. So it's really nice where like the users get lots of optionality, and you don't need to like be pigeonholed into like using these set of oracles just because that's what everyone else uses. So
So
it's really
so
go ahead.
sorry, so why is that so important, right? From like I guess from the integrity of the entire scheme.
Well, yeah, so like say if we said like, for Bitcoin price bets, you have to use like the Coinbase Oracle. That's like the only one. If Coinbase like went down one day, or US government came in and tried to regulate them, now all of our stuff is like totally botched and we need to like recreate everything. Whereas with this, it's just like, okay, now all new contracts that people make, you just start picking new ones. Or even with this, we can do like a set of oracles. So you could say like we're doing like 3 of 5 oracles have to attest to a price. And so if like say if Coinbase was compromised, well, they're just like now we have 4 oracles you can pick from, and hopefully those are all fine.
So I guess for someone who is unfamiliar with DLCs and kind of the ecosystem and vision that SuredBits and other companies are trying to build, can you kind of talk a little bit about like the UX of like dealing with, or the future UX of like using this kind of stuff? Like, are people going to just use a wallet and they'll be able to like peer to peer coordinate these contracts? Like, how does this kind of work from like a usage perspective?
Yeah, the UX right now is still kind of up in the air. I mean, personally at SuredBits, we have a library called Bitcoin S, and we built all of our DLC functionality into it. We have like a very, very rudimentary GUI where you like are copying, pasting like hex files between each other, which obviously is terrible UX. But one day this will be like all automated for you. Where you just type in an address or like a an onion link or like an invoice similar to Lightning. You'll click like open DLC and your two wallets will negotiate between each other. So it's gonna be something similar to like a Lightning wallet where you're gonna deposit funds and then find a peer, create and then open your DLC with each other, and the wallets will handle everything else in the back end. And then once you have your Oracle signatures attesting to like the Bitcoin price or the Super Bowl winner or whatever you were betting on, you just paste that into your wallet, or maybe even your wallet will pull it from a trusted source and it'll execute your DLC right for you.
Very cool. So let's talk about Krystal Bull. This is a new protocol you put out. Like what is the purpose of Krystal Bull, and why should people, developers in particular, start checking out the code base?
Yeah, Krystal Bull is something really cool. So one weekend I was bored and was like, oh, Bitcoin S doesn't have an Oracle implementation. I should try to see how hard that is to do. So it took me actually only a few hours to like bang out, but basically it's just a very rudimentary DLC Oracle, and I just put a GUI on top of it. So it lets you just create any kind of event and attest to it. And it's really simple. Like being an Oracle has almost no overhead. You don't need to be aware of the Bitcoin chain or any chain. All you're doing is having a private key and signing things. So all it does is just like say you want to create an event for the Super Bowl, you just type in, your event name and your potential outcomes, hit create event, and then when you want to sign the event after it's happened, you just click that event and hit sign. It's like really rudimentary and basic, but it's really nice because since it is so basic, literally anyone can be an Oracle. So you could have like large players like exchanges like Coinbase and Kraken, or you could have just Joe Schmo, maybe like some random dude in Nigeria with barely an internet connection can do it, just because this is such a low barrier entry thing to do.
So I chatted about this earlier, but kind of what makes an Oracle trustworthy, right? So it's not necessarily like a reputation trust, like you're trusting in Coinbase. Can you kind of talk about how reputation works and why someone would choose an Oracle from a reputation perspective?
Yeah, so this oracle is going to be like deciding, or a set of oracles is going to be deciding how your contract executes. So you want to pick someone that you like at least somewhat trust, or is has something on the line. So like generally in the beginning we see just like exchanges being these major players just because currently they have these like kind of reputations. But obviously those can be like they're a lot more susceptible to regulation, and or those are huge honeypots that someone could hack. So we also see just like Joe Schmo plebs like us just being oracles as well, just because it provides that degree of safety. And we also kind of like have seen this already in the wild with things like Liquid, where you have like big exchanges, and then you also have like Wiz as a federation member. So it's totally possible that people start doing this. And so you really want to pick your oracle just on someone that you trust and you think is going to be not going to be lying. But we also do have mitigations for if they do lie or do something wrong, or which we call fraud proofs. So like if an oracle, like say I'm an oracle and I'm attesting to the Super Bowl, if instead of signing Tampa Bay one, I'd sign Tampa Bay one and um San Diego one. I think that was the other team.
Kansas City, but I'll
Kansas
forgive you.
City. Yeah, that's right.
You just
That's
keep focusing on Bitcoin, Ben.
but yeah, say if I give out two signatures like that, I'll reveal my private key, and now anyone can make a signature for me. And something that you can do to like put money on the line for this is stake funds under that private key. So you just like turn that private key into a public key. and just turn that into a Bitcoin address. It's very simple to do. And then I can put funds up there so anyone can go on chain and see like, oh, Ben has 10 Bitcoin that he's putting behind his weight. And if he lies and puts out 2 signatures, I can steal that 10 Bitcoin, or someone can. And it's also a good signal, because if I am going to lie, well, I'll probably move that Bitcoin beforehand. So you can see on chain like, oh shit, Ben the Carman's about to lie. Let me, let's close out our contract because this is not going to be a valid contract.
So what if the person just lies without signing two different outcomes, right? So in the Super Bowl, Tampa Bay won, but what if I just signed Kansas City won? Is there a mitigation against that?
Um, kind of. So you could create a fraud proof. You could like say like, oh look, Ben gave this signature that says Tampa Bay won. Obviously that's or not Tampa Bay, Kansas City won. That's obviously not what happened. And then it's a cryptographic proof. It's just a signature I created. So you could distribute that widely, like show like, look, Ben cryptographically said he's a liar. You can't steal my funds, but also you can mitigate that in your own contract by just using multiple oracles. So you could have like a 3 of 5 thing. So now you need like 3 people to lie to be able to have your contract be like, invalid.
And these oracles don't know that you're kind of bundling them together, right? You're kind of picking three oracles, they're random, they're not in contact with each other, supposedly. Is that true?
Yeah. So the oracles don't have to interact at all with each other, and the users don't have to directly interact with the oracles. So like, say you're a user using me as an oracle, I won't know that you're using me. So I can't be like, oh shit, Christian used me. And then I can go to Coinbase like, oh, he used you as well. We can conspire and screw him over. Like we have no idea you're using us. So that would make it so like you have a, plausible deniability and like protection from like the privacy aspect as well.
I mean, I also kind of see that also adding to the censorship resistance of some of these contracts, right? Like you could see like the fact that it's so permissionless to be a signer, and then on the flip side, like there's you really don't know who is tapping into and using your signatures. Like that plausible deniability from a legal perspective, I feel like is probably a nice benefit. Um, Kind of curious, like, okay, so you're a signer, you're an Oracle signer. I'm just some person who is, betting on the Super Bowl. What's the incentive for you to put money down, to sign, to like, manage this whole thing? Like, why are you being an Oracle?
I mean, for one, it's almost zero cost. Like, doing it does, I mean, it takes me like probably like a few minutes to set up, and that's all I have to do. But like incentive to keep doing it. I mean, initially we just see exchanges doing it because they already do it for free for other chains like Ethereum. So, it kind of just signifies, like, oh, my order book is important. You should care about it. And it's like basically also just a free marketing technique saying they are a DLC Oracle. But otherwise, we have written some blog posts and like theorized ways you could actually sell your signatures, where you could like provably give a signature that's and then it's encrypted with your Lightning payment. So once you pay, they get the signature, and they can actually close out their thing. So you could do a thing where it's like, here's my announcement for the event, and then when you want the signature, pay me a couple sats, and now I'm like getting paid for being an oracle.
Okay, but that kind of functionality is not possible today with DLCs because you need DLCs over Lightning, which isn't possible until we have Taproot and some other upgrades. You've also been a really big proponent of Taproot and pushing things forward. Do you want to kind of pivot to that, since that kind of really opens the door for more DLC functionality?
Yeah, Taproot will be awesome for DLC, like all smart contracting on Bitcoin, and DLC is also going to benefit a lot. Because what Taproot lets us do is hide that we're using this multi-sig. So today if we're doing a DLC, we have a 202 multi-sig on chain. People can explicitly see that. Now with Taproot, we can hide that. So our on-chain footprint will literally just look like users sending between each other, and like no one can tell if it's like just users, if it's DLC, if it's a Lightning channel, if it's liquid. They can't tell at all. So it's really going to grow the anonymity set for a lot of users, as well as just like reduce the on-chain fees as well for these things, since we don't have to put all this extra data on chain. So it's going to be super nice. And then it also enables new things on Lightning. where a lot of the stuff basically it lets us use PTLCs instead of HTLCs. So changing the hash lock to a point lock, which lets us move one of our locking mechanisms from on-chain to inside of our signature. So it reduces on-chain space. And then since it's a point and not a hash, we can actually start doing math and stuff like that. So we can start using like this point to be a pivotal part of our contract to like be a DLC or to be to add random things going on chain, and it really enables a lot of new use cases.
Okay, so I think there's two ways that we can take this. One is talk about, where Taproot is in the activation process. What's your take on, lot true, lot false, that kind of stuff. But the other way is I also want to talk about like, what is enabled in terms of actual products that, kind of come with a Taproot Bitcoin functionality. So I guess let's start with kind of talking about where Taproot is. Again, you've really been a big voice here, both in the conversation as well as educating users, especially Twitter users, about what was happening kind of on IRC and stuff like that. I guess why don't you update our audience?
Yeah, so Taproot is like it's merged in the Bitcoin core. It's like the code is done, the entire spec is done. It's just like we need to figure out how we want to turn this thing on Bitcoin, and we need to figure out a way to do it all at the same time in a decentralized way, and with no like potential vulnerabilities. And obviously that's a very hard thing to do, especially after everyone has battle scars after SegWit. So previously how we activated Softworks was using this thing called BIP9, which basically says during this period, if miners signal inside of their block that they for the upgrade that they're ready, once a certain threshold is reached, then we'll activate it. But like what we saw in SegWit though, miners use that to try to veto the upgrade, and then we had to respond with the UASF and like force the upgrade through. So and then postmortem after that, people wrote a BIP called BIP8, which adds an optional parameter to it called lock-in on timeout, which just means if the miners don't activate at the end, then we're gonna force them to signal and UASF it anyways.
It's like a
And
built-in UASF.
yeah, it's like a default thing, which is like, like during SegWit activation, people had to release a separate client that had like all this extra unreviewed or like not as reviewed code, and it's not as a safe process. So it'd be nice if we just had this thing built into our client that would do it for us. But this like for the last like few years, I was kind of like, oh, this will probably be the activation method. We don't know what if we'll use lock-in a timeout true or false, but we'll see. And then since the code's been merged and then people are actually trying to decide a activation method, it sparked this huge controversy where people, there's like, if you go on the Bitcoin dev mailing list, there's like hundreds and hundreds of emails of people bickering of like which one they want to do. And it kind of blew up where it seemed like Bitcoin Core was going to merge lock-in on timeout false. So then people went to go make a separate client that had lock-in on timeout true. And then that discouraged people from actually merging lock-in and timeout false, because if we have clients running with both, there's a potential chain split. So people kind of got mad about that. And then it kind of turned into nothing. And then luckily in the last week, a new proposal by Rusty Russell came out called Speedy Trial. And this is basically what it is a 3-month lock-in on timeout false, but with the caveat that if the miners do signal, it doesn't activate right after they're done signaling. It waits 3 months, and then the Taproot rules will start being enforced. And this is done so miners don't have to get like their entire infrastructure ready immediately to signal. They can signal and then in that 3-month period get their entire infrastructure ready. So it gives them a lot more incentive to signal earlier, and hopefully it could get Taproot activated even this year.
Okay, that's news for me. Bitcoin Magazine has been covering the Taproot activation discussion heavily. Aaron Van Werdum did a podcast on it. He wrote a really great article on it. So shout out to Aaron for kind of adding to that. But I was unaware of what this is called, Speedy Trial.
Yeah. No, this thing, it kind of culminated over the weekend and has been like being debated right now. But it seems like Michael Fulton made a list of like everyone that's active, and it's like hundreds of people long. So it looks like people are all on board with this.
Okay, very, very interesting. So might have to dig up some more content around this for Bitcoin Magazine. But okay, that's awesome to hear in terms of the update. So just really quick, so Lot True is effectively the built-in UASF. It's after a year, we're turning on Taproot no matter what the signal is. And then Lot False is effectively miner activated soft fork. So wait till the miners hit a certain threshold of signaling. And then, it sounds like they would need to immediately, but before they signal, they'd have to get their infrastructure ready. Then they signal. And then when 90% threshold hits, then we go forward with it. So I can kind of see why people are, wouldn't like that. Maybe some miners would kick the can down the road on actually upgrading their infrastructure, stuff like that. And then now this new proposal from Rusty Russell, which is just over the weekend, and I don't even know when this podcast is going to be released, so it might be old news by then. But this proposal is miner activated soft fork for 3 months, or sorry, signaling period for 3 months, and then after they hit the threshold, they have another 3 months to actually upgrade before Taproot is activated. So it's really a 6-month activation plan. So it's quick, but it kind of splits up signaling and building out the infrastructure. So that way they have skin in the game once it's been quote unquote activated, but they still have time to, or I guess quote unquote signaled for, but they still have time to like, get their shit together.
Yeah, and there's been like besides Segwit, almost every soft fork is activated within like the first 2 or 3 months. And we a bunch of mining pools have like come out and said like, yeah, we plan to signal for Taproot like no matter what. So it seems like this will work just fine. It will actually activate. So I'm pretty bullish on it, and I'm glad we finally have an activation method that people agree on.
So what's the timeline, right? Right now, March 11th. When, if you're feeling bullish, when do you think this thing's going to go down?
So the proposed start time for signaling, I think, is in it's either like end of June or like mid-July around then. So I think we should have it by end of year, like activated on the network. But I hope so at least. But it seems like that'll happen. If speed trial fails, then we'll know by like October, November, and then we can start a new activation method if we need to.
Awesome. Well, I was not expecting to learn about Taproot activation mechanism on this interview, but I'm glad that I went down this rabbit hole. So let's pivot back to okay. So Taproot, hopefully this year it's going to go through. That's going to enable a lot of cool functionality on Bitcoin. You kind of went over the basic kind of benefits there. But in terms of actual DLCs, you kind of described point lock contracts, and why those are better, why that allows you to like do math in the contract. Can you like, break that down for someone who's not an engineer? Like why is doing math in the contract better than just dealing with a hash?
Yeah, so basically this math can just be you could just like start using things that represent anything. So like for a DLC, if you want to do that, you could just say like oh, I'm going to subtract a number from my point, and this number is essentially a secret that your counterparty doesn't know. So they need this secret to be able to claim their payment on Lightning. So now the secret can represent anything you want. So the secret could be, the execution logic you need for a DLC. It could be some other secret making for another payment, so you can make like atomic payments that way. It could be literally anything. So the secret in the DLC way is just like the oracle's signature. So once the oracle signs the message, then they see the secret and can claim their payment. So that's like kind of the math thing. And then you could just have multiple secrets, and once you have all the secrets, you add them up together, combine that into your point, and now you've claimed your payment. So it can be like literally anything you want. That's kind of the best way to explain it.
Okay, so I guess like give us a practical use case that you wish you could do right now, just to kind of like help the listeners visualize.
Yeah, so I mean, we can just go back to the Super Bowl bet example where, say, me and you have a Lightning channel together, and we want to do a DLC. Instead of having to do on-chain payments, like today, fees are ridiculously expensive, and screw that. So we're gonna use Lightning. So basically, I make a Lightning payment to you, but I don't give you the secret to claim it. I give you part of the secret, and the other half of the secret is going to be this Oracle signature. So then now, eventually, Super Bowl happens, Tampa Bay wins. Say our third party Oracle signs Tampa Bay wins, and then you can get that secret from the Oracle, and then just plug it into that payment, and now you've claimed your payment successfully and got you got your money's worth. I lost my money sadly, but and now you've claimed it. But yeah.
Gotcha. So effectively, this allows you to do it on Lightning, and it's a cleaner, no fee or minimal fee type of an environment. So can we like fast forward to the future where like all of this stuff has been shipped and ecosystem has kind of been built? Can we talk about like what does Bitcoin finance look like in the future, right? Because I feel like right now, if you want to do it Bitcoin natively, Unchained Capital is kind of pushing things forward with like getting loans and using multi-sig, so that way you know the counterparties and you have this third party, so it's not 100% in Unchained's custody. Like we're starting to see the development of let's call it Bitcoin native finance, but it seems like DLCs are a really important puzzle piece and really kind of taking that functionality to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, we see DLCs becoming like the Bitcoin DeFi kind of thing, where this basically lets you do any sort of financial contract you want on Bitcoin, on chain and Lightning especially, which is really nice. So like we see things where initially it'll probably just be like degen gambling on like sports and elections or whatever you want, but eventually once this thing is way more built out, you could have like options contracts, futures contracts. You could use this to even like hold other assets, where something we did where we basically did a contract based on the Bitcoin price, so that one of the holders held this the same dollar amount of Bitcoin throughout the contract. So you essentially have like a stable coin in that way without having to actually interact with like the financial system, or the legacy financial system. So we see these things like evolving to like pursue like almost anything you want to do for like Bitcoin finance. It's just like building it out. But yeah, there's like we've been working with a couple exchanges trying to get them to be oracles, and they see this as like a potential revenue stream, and ways to do things where they could like have like a futures product or an options product using this.
All right. Well, I want to totally pivot the conversation. Earlier this week or last week, you and Vake kind of confronted some prominent libertarian influencers. I just kind of want to talk a little bit about that. And, I guess the crux of your message was that like libertarians that aren't taking action and aren't adopting Bitcoin are kind of LARPs. I guess, what do you want to add to that? You want to kind of like walk us through what went down?
Yeah, so it was pretty funny. Like, so the whole like stiff started from Eric tweeting out like he's responding to the $1.9 trillion stimulus, where he's like, the dollar's going to shit. You should buy. He said precious metals, crypto, and land. Most importantly, land. And Vake replied, land is not the most important. It's Bitcoin because X, Y, and Z, which most listeners should probably know. It's censorship resistant, not inflatable, can't be confiscated. All these things. It doesn't really apply to land. So, and then Eric replied to him, "You're a dumbass," and then was like kind of mean to him. So that kind of just spiraled out of control, and Vic started calling him a LARP, and I jumped in saying like, "Yeah, you're kind of a LARP if you're, if you're a libertarian that he's an ANCAP. He wants the like complete abolition of the state. Yet we have Bitcoin, this tool that does exactly what he wants. Yet he doesn't promote it at all in his content, or like he says he does, but like very very far and few between.
I
And
mean, if he's recommending crypto, then he doesn't get it.
yeah, and so like when I went, so eventually after like yelling at each other on Twitter for like 2 or 3 days, on I think it was on Tuesday, we went on his podcast and talked to him. Like when we talked to him, he said he owns Monero, and so it's just like, okay, you clearly don't fully get it. We're trying to explain this to you to like clearly get it. Like you have tons of experts in the space that want to talk to you. Like it wasn't just me and Vic replying to his threads. He had like like Alex Svetsky, he had like just tons of plebs like responding to him like, no dude, you clearly don't get this thing, we're trying to explain it to you. And he's like, no, I get it, like being the you're just being arrogant about it. And but when we went on this podcast, we were just trying to explain like, if you have this tool Bitcoin that is actively um, reducing the state's power by taking away their money printing ability, hindering their tax ability. And we're seeing it in the real world where like we have countries like Nigeria where they're like, our currency is useless, Bitcoin is like taking away our power. And he doesn't want to, like, he says like, yes, Bitcoin is a good tool, but it's like you have this entire channel devoted to like Bitcoin, or not libertarian content. Yeah, like he doesn't not promote Bitcoin, he doesn't promote like any tools. Like he doesn't promote like 3D gun printing, he doesn't promote like, I asked him like, what do you think are solutions besides Bitcoin? He said, well, we could all just like say fuck you to the state and leave. I'm like, so I'm like, okay, if that's a solution, you never talk about that. And I don't even think that is a viable solution. Like that's not socially scalable.
He's not talking about flag theory. He's not talking about 3D printing guns. He's not talking about creating censorship resistant money. Like I mean, I think you guys are right. Like that is LARPing. And I feel like a lot of gold bugs and a lot of libertarians and like part of the Libertarian Party and Cato Institute, I've said this before. It's like, people who are used to losing, crying about freedom and they're afraid to do something about it. And then when you see like the IMF or the ECB tweeting things about monetary policy, it's only Bitcoiners responding. Like only Bitcoiners are thinking about this. Like it really is unbelievable, like kind of the libertarian establishment, how there's like that disconnect with action, right? And like I've tweeted this before as well. I've said, Bitcoin is the most important thing happening today, and that's saying a lot. Like, like,
Yeah.
so how can you not promote it? Like, how can you not promote it as someone who wants to bring back sovereignty and freedom?
Yeah, I totally agree. Like if you're just like, if you like turn the most like Bernie bro AOC voter into a libertarian, like that's good. But once you do that, like they need something to actually do. Other like, if they stop voting for them, like sure, that's one vote that's not towards like communists or socialists, but that they have nothing to do. Like you really like you need like actual advice that actually helps promote liberty, and like things like flag theory, 3D printing guns, and especially Bitcoin are like pivotal for this. But if you don't promote this, like sure, you're getting people on your side, but they need something to do to actually bring about liberty into their lives and into the world.
I guess anything else to say on that?
And I think we covered it pretty well. But yeah, buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, buy Bitcoin. Fuck politics, buy Bitcoin. All right, Ben. This is a fun conversation, a little wide ranging, but really appreciate you giving us the skinny on DLCs, Taproot activation, Bitcoin, the future of Bitcoin finance, all of it. So thanks for coming on.
No problem, man. Anytime.
So I guess we'll want to give you a chance to kind of give a last word as well as plug yourself. Where can people learn more about you?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter, Ben the Carman, or if you want to know anything more about what we talked today, we have like a million blog posts on the SuredBits site, suredbits.com/blog. We have everything on like DLCs, Taproot, Lightning, basically like anything Bitcoin tech if you want to learn more. So yeah, go check that out.
You guys check out Ben. I met Ben back in 2019, the summer of 2019, and he was just an eager pleb trying to get into the Bitcoin space, and he's absolutely blown up, doing amazing work. And Ben, you're the man. But I think for all the plebs out there, you can contribute to Bitcoin too in your own way. And this community is all about is all about merit. So if you go out there and you do good work, like you're gonna rise through the ranks.
Yeah, if like you're if you're someone that wants to start getting into space, just start like in your developer, just start contributing to random projects. If you're doing good shit, people will spot you and give you the recognition you deserve. So yeah, if you also if you're a developer that ever needs help, feel free to reach out to me or probably almost any dev, and they'll point you in the right direction if you need it.
Love it. All right, Ben. Peace out. And to all the Bitcoin Magazine listeners, make sure to smash subscribe. Make sure to give us those 5-star reviews, and make sure to give us a follow on Twitter at Bitcoin Magazine. Peace.